Thank you for staying with us. You're still watching The Breakfast on Plus TV Africa. Well, it's time to look at our first hot topic, and this says SAN advocates constitutional amendment for local government autonomy. The senior advocate of Nigeria, Professor Oladayo Amokaye, has called for an amendment to the 1999 Constitution to clarify the status, funding, and responsibility of local governments. Speaking at the Adekunle Kukoyi Memorial Lecture in Lagos, he emphasized the need for reforms to strengthen local governments as an effective third tier of government. Amokaye urged alignment of constitutional provisions with recent Supreme Court rulings, free and fair local elections, and independent state electoral commissions to ensure transparency and accountability. He also stressed the importance of prosecuting corrupt officials and conducting regular audits of local government finances. The event, hosted by the Nigerian Institution of Surveyors (NIS), honored the late Adekunle Kukoyi for his contributions to the surveying profession and his legacy of integrity and excellence. Joining us this morning is Barrister Asia Edo, is a legal practitioner, and we're just going to be discussing this. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Please, just to correct the name, is Elvis Asia, not Elvis. Those not part of the name.
All right. Thank you so much, Asia. Barrister Elvis Asia. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you for having me on the program.
All right. So we're talking about local governments and their autonomy. So I think last year, that was when this really had the wave where people heard about it, the local government financial autonomy, because in the past, it has seemed as though it was the state governments that were still ruling the affairs of the local government. So most times they put their people there, whatever allocation that comes in, it has to come to the states before it's being given to them. But in your opinion, let's start with, context and background. What is the local government autonomy and why is it so essential? What is the impact of it? Why is it so essential that we need this right now in Nigeria?
First, just to make the point that it was in 2024 that the issue of local government autonomy became a national question. It's always been with us. Don't forget that in 2003, the Obasanjo administration constituted a committee, technical committee, to restructure the local government system, and recommendations were made by that committee on how to restructure the local government system, particularly with a view to having financial autonomy. And the recommendation of that committee was not implemented. And of course, in 2011, attempt was also made to restructure the local government system by way of constitutional amendment. All the recommendations that were made in that regard were defeated by the governors, who has control over the state House of Assemblies that must, make input in the amendment process. The same thing played out in 2023. So the issue of local government autonomy has always been with us. And for somebody like me who grew up in my village, who saw firsthand what the local government system can do, I can tell you for free that, having a local government system that is free, that has financial autonomy, it's very, very important, because that is the closest, system of governance that you have, that the people see on a daily basis. Today, across the country, you go around the country, go around the local governments across the country, you find that there's no semblance of any government presence in many of our rural communities, in many of our farming communities. And these are and don't forget that by statistics, they make up about almost half of the population concentration in the country in terms of where people live. And then don't also forget that agriculture is usually carried out in those areas, and all of that. So having a system of government that can have the funding, that can independently cater for those functions that are provided by the Constitution, the role that is provided by the Constitution to be played by the local government system, it's very, very vital. Look at some of these roads, all these feeder roads across the country that are no longer motorable. People cannot, bring in goods to these city centers because, they don't have roads that should be graded by the local government system. When I was growing up, local government chairman used to grade these roads on a yearly basis. We don't have that anymore. markets, burial centers, all sort of functions that are vested on local government have been appropriated by the states. And the whole thing started because the state governors, in an attempt to maintain political hold on their state, decided to appropriate everything about local government. Local government funding became the pastime of the governors. It became the pool of resources from where they used to carry out their political fight. And this is where we have gotten to this point. So local government, fiscal autonomy for local government system is really part of devolution of power across the country. You see, we have always complained that there's over concentration of powers
in the center,
at the federal government, and so when you have a functional local government system, that is one of the ways to ensure that powers go to the people. And don't forget that the effect of that is that local people, ordinary people on the street, in our rural communities and our local governments across the country, will be able to participate in state elections, national elections, using the local government system as a platform. But as it is now, it has been completely destroyed by the governors, and it's almost non-existent.
So you've literally just spoken about, obviously, developments in rural areas and the local government of the state, right? But with all of this, knowing that this has been an issue for so long, why is this still a contentious issue in Nigeria? Why is it not something that we should definitely just do right now, especially if one of the SANs is saying we need to amend the constitution to be able to have provisions for all of this?
It's simple. The reason is that governors across the country have become greedy. They want to have everything all to themselves. They want to emasculate the system in such a way that they control every part of the state. And the first way, the major way they do that is through the local government system. And then also they want to also have unrestrained access to the resources of the local government. And and in most cases, you look at it, since 1999, nobody has ever questioned any government about how the funds that have been allocated, billions and trillions that have been allocated to governments across the country since 1999, nobody has accounted for it. And Nigerians have not gotten any value for it. So local government funds is a major source of funding for governors and politicians across the states. And because nobody's investigating, nobody's questioning it, they found it to be very easy funds that they can use. And this is the reason why it has become very, very difficult for us to do what it should be ordinarily be easy, give effect to the intention of the Constitution as reflected in Section 7 and 8, which critically says that you must have a democratically elected government council at every time. But unfortunately, the greed of the governors, the political, the attempt to have political hold solely across the state is the bane of all these problems. The attempt to amend the Constitution to reflect these ideals of fiscal autonomy for local government has always been there, like I said, since 2003, when the Obasanjo administration took the laudable step to set up a committee to try to and they made recommendations, 3 fundamental recommendations that could have guaranteed local government autonomy. For example, they recommended that the state joint account should be abolished. Funds should be paid directly to local government council, which was not achieved in 2024 by the Supreme Court decision. But it would have been better if you have it clearly in the Constitution. And they also recommended that you should remove the State Independent Electoral Commission from the Constitution, so that local government elections will be conducted by INEC. Because we have also seen that even if you allow monies to be paid directly to local government councils, as we are trying to achieve now with the Supreme Court decision, the governors still have a way of controlling the funds. They will come through the back door. They are the ones that they are the ones that fund the states INEC. Let me use that word. And in that process, they do whatever they like. And then Section 8 of the Constitution also gives the states the power to make a law on the existence, the structure and the functions of the local government system. And so, in making that law, they put in so many provisions which are aimed at ensuring that the government continues to have that control. And so, the only way you can achieve that is to have a full constitutional amendment that will remove some of these hurdles. But like I said, the problem has always been the governors. They are in control of the State House of Assembly. I mean, look at the State House of Assembly across the country. How many of them are effective? In most cases, it is just a case of the governors. Some of these funds that they have accumulated from the government, they use it to get their way through the House of Assembly, and as a result, we are unable to amend get 24 because the Constitution says 2/3 of the states, House of Assembly must contribute in the amendment of the Constitution. And so that means you need about 24 states House of Assembly must vote for any amendment. And so we have not been able to achieve that. In 2011, we couldn't achieve it. In 2023, we couldn't achieve it. And the ongoing attempt, I also doubt how that is going to be achieved until the politicians, the governors, can come to terms with the fact that the whole idea of politics and public service is, to meet the yearnings and aspirations of the people. And on this call, the yearning and aspiration of the Nigerian people, particularly the grassroots, is to have a local government system that they can easily have access to, a local government system that can solve, local problems, a local government system that can become a platform, a platform for, local people to become involved in politics, in national politics, and that's what we used to have. We have had local government chairmen who became governors, who became even president. I think who became national ministers. Because we had some form of effectiveness at local government level, particularly in 1999, between 1999 and 2003 or thereabout. But since that time onwards, we have had this anomaly, and it is clearly the fault of the governors.
So, of course, you've spoken about some of the hurdles, some of the things that have hindered, them actually having their own constitutional rights as a local government. But from your own legal standpoint, what are some changes you think is needed right now, and how would it even align with the principles of federalism? Because if we're saying we want to practice true federalism, of course, we need to have the 3 tiers of government, which is the federal government, the state government, and the local government. So what are some of the changes that you, as a legal practitioner, would want to see in the Constitution?
Well, the first thing we need to do if we want to have a local government system that can meet the yearnings and aspirations of the people at the grassroots, first thing we need to do is to ensure that Section 8 of the Constitution is clearly removed from the Constitution. Section 8 that says that the states should, ensure that there's a law that guarantees the structure, the functions, and whatever of the local government should be removed from the Constitution. We should have a clear provision in the Constitution that talks about the structure, the financing, the functions, and in fact, the essential nature of local government system should be clearly defined by the Constitution, so that remove this control by State House of Assembly. Federalism doesn't mean you cannot do that. Federalism doesn't mean that the state should control the local government. No, that's not what federalism means. Federalism simply means that the federal government doesn't control what the states do with their funds, with their structure, with the way their system works. So the same thing we should have with local government system, because the local government system is still far, far more important than all the other arms of government if we really mean well for the people at the grassroots. So we need to ensure that we have clearly defined structure, clearly defined function, clearly defined system of local government that we have in the country, defined in the Constitution. So the State House of Assembly will no longer have any powers to make any such law. That was one of the amendments we need to make. Another amendment we need to make is that we must clearly, in doing that, we must clearly state that local government system is the 3rd arm of government. Because some of the governors are arguing, and sometimes when you look at the Constitution, you are in doubt as to whether they are right or wrong. They're arguing that the local government system is not a 3rd arm of government. It's a government, that is to be controlled by the states. And when you look at Section 8 of the Constitution and the 3rd schedule, you sometimes you doubt whether they are right or wrong. You don't want to have that. You want to remove that and clearly state in the Constitution that local government is the 3rd arm of government, and that will be clearly defined. And then, yes, the Supreme Court with the Supreme Court decision, we have achieved some sort of, succor in terms of preventing the governors from having direct access to the funds of local government. we need to entrench that in the Constitution. That provision that talks about joint account for the local government and the states should be clearly expunged. Local governments should have their accounts, and monies should be paid directly to that account. And then we need to also ensure that the system of the democracy at local government level is not controlled by the states. It should be an independent system, just like the INEC conducts elections for the states. And that in itself does not mean that the federal government now controls the states. We should have a system like that, clearly defined in the Constitution. A department in INEC can be designed and specially created by the Constitution to handle elections at local government level. That way you won't have this system where the governors can either have access to the funds and take it, or they use their people to populate the local government system through sham elections. And I can tell you for free that 99% of the elections at local government level are sham elections. Elections are not held, results are written, and that is the truth. We have seen it firsthand in many of these states. And so you cannot continue to have a situation like that. So you need to have a department in INEC, a special agency or department in INEC, specially created with independence to manage elections at the local government level. And once you have that, you see that you are going to have a serious, reasonable government system that can really meet the yearnings and aspirations of the people. Many of us cannot access our communities. It wasn't like that even under the military rule. It wasn't like that. In other military rule, local government system that we had at that time, many of the local government councils had tractors, they had graders, they had all of these implements and tools that they use every year to go around the village roads, so that at least people can access their villages. People can go to the farm. If you look at the way Nigeria is now, even globally, agriculture is the only thing that can solve our problem. And how do you encourage young people, the Gen Zs of this world, to go to to go to their villages when there are no roads, there are no amenities, there are no infrastructure, there's no light, there's no power. They can't have access to internet. At the end of the day, you not look at it. Why are we wasting so much money staying in our cities? There are so many people wasting in the cities, but they are ashamed to go to their village because the way the villages are. But if you have a government system that's functional, that can fix those problems, you see people going back to the villages, people going to make farms, and the country will become better for it. So these three fundamentals are very, very key if we really want to have a local government system that works.
So that was quite an in-depth, analysis on what we definitely want to see in the Constitution, and hopefully it would help with the developments, because you spoke about not having access to good roads, of course, amenities and all of that, and those are things that we want. And if we're talking about development, it starts from the grassroots, because everybody is from one local government area or the other. And if we want Nigeria to be progressive, if we want Nigeria to be a better country in terms of development, it should start from there, not just pumping all of our monies into the city, not just staying in the urban centers and saying that's okay, because at some point you still need to go back to your village, you still need to go back to your roots. And hopefully, with this, if this constitution will be amended, it will just be for the betterment of all of the constituencies, for all of the local government. And another thing is, we hope that there will be no corruption involved, whereby the monies that are being allocated when it comes to the financial autonomy of the local government is being put to good use. Elvis, we want to say thank you so much for coming. It's always a pleasure having you on our show. Thank you, sir, for your time.
Thank you for having me on.
Have a wonderful day. Yeah. I'm speaking to Elvis Asia, is a legal practitioner, and we've just been talking about the fact that an SAN has spoken about the Constitution and why it should be amended for the local government autonomy. We'll go on a short break now. When we return, we'll be discussing the International Day of Education, addressing out-of-school children. Please stay with us.